Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for joining our EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We're really excited to have Darryl Riley with us today. He's an expert in helping folks ensure that they don't experience recidivism or entry back into incarceration after they are released, and is here to talk about the challenges that folks that are released from jail or prison face. So with that, a couple housekeeping items. I'm going to put folks on mute other than Darryl. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand and your virtual hand, and we will call on you and for you to ask your question. Or if you prefer to ask your question or just put your question in the chat, I will go ahead and ask it for you to Darryl. So with that, thanks so much, Darryl, for joining us. We're excited to learn about the experience that these folks go through after they are released. So take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had at least half of their first cup of coffee this morning. I'm a CEO and entrepreneur, Darryl Riley. I'd like to start off by giving a shout out to Dr. Ames and my partner in this work, Christina Rourke and Kitsap Strong, for connecting me with Colleen. I'm honored to present on this morning. And I think I'm correct in concurring. I've been looking over the videos of you for the last few years, and I think this is a little bit different of a space or different of what I've normally seen presented by the EDC. So I'm just greatly honored. Again, my name is Darryl Riley, businessman and entrepreneur. I own multiple businesses in Kitsap County. I'm also the only Black franchise owner in Kitsap County. Currently sit as chairperson of the Asset Building Coalition in Kitsap County, and just a lot of things going on to impact our community. So if we could start with the slideshow with Mitch, we can kind of give you guys a bird's eye view of what we do and where we are and how that could possibly impact you all. So I met Dr. Ames at a reentry simulation that is one of the things that we focus on, and I decided to start with this picture because this is a reentry simulation we did in Whatcom County, and the reason I started with this photo is because one of the leaders of the police department of law enforcement, if you look at his face, this gentleman is actually in jail. He's in jail as part of the simulation, he and other folks around him. And this is where the change actually occurs because he was in jail by choice, right? Reentry was so difficult for a law enforcement officer until he decided to stay in jail, although he had money to get out. I mean, you might ask yourself how that occurs, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But again, in 2020, after the uprisings of Judge Floyd and all of that, our community, we knew being 5% Black in particular and 70% to 75% white, we knew we had to move something to empower ourselves. I think one of the things for me, I would show up to spaces where they would have Black Lives Matters events, and it would be ran by all people, all white people, and it wouldn't be any Black folks involved. So the goal was to figure out how to empower and mobilize people of color in our community, so that we could give more of the essence of the issues from our perspective. So got together with a couple like-minded business owners in the community, and we developed Up From Slavery. Our mission is to help heal and empower our marginalized community. And in deciding how we would move forward, we knew the name would be tricky. We knew the name would bring two responses. You would be like, "Oh crap, what is that?" Or you would say, Hmm. Oh boy, what is that? It was extremely tough in 2020 for most white people and a great deal of black people to say those words up from slavery initiative because you didn't know what it came with. And we decided that we wouldn't approach it from a victim standpoint. It's nothing like the name kind of would lead you to believe. But we wanted to come from a space of empowerment. So our vision was to help empower those communities and making their problems our problems while solving them together. And as it relates to the book Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington that I happened to be reading during this time, we just gauged how people of color went from being newly freed slaves to building thriving communities like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma in less than 50 years, and to create pathways of freedom from confinement and death. And so we formed our three pillars. Next slide, please. Our pillars were financial literacy, which was our number one pillar because we understood that 70% of the problems as it pertains to people of color have to do with making a dollar and what to do with it when you get it, and access to those funds. So over the past 4 years, we've created our own financial literacy programs and efforts. We have a they're all under the umbrella of Level Up, and Level Up is an acronym that stands for Learning Every Valuable Economic Lesson and Understanding Profit. And we created camps, summer camps, and spring break camps for financial literacy for youth and high school students. And to date, we have close to 300 students that have gone through our programs and have financial literacy education tools that most of their parents don't have. And the kicker for us, we understood that there's no sense in teaching you the game of money and not giving you anything to play with. So as incentive for our programs, all students receive $200 checking and savings accounts at a local credit union. So not only do we have young students as young as 8 years old with bank accounts at a credit union, some of them have started businesses. Some of them have business plans and ideas. And it's amazing to get an invitation from a young kid inviting you to a business opportunity that they've found themselves engaged in or some type of workshop. So we're really excited about that. And you know, we've recently partnered with a bank in our community, a credit union, which helps us fund these accounts. So that's been really an amazing opportunity for us. We also have an educated consumers course for seniors and for those making under $30,000 a year. We found through the data that most people can't come up with $500 emergency funds in the case of emergency. So we use that as an incentive and provide those seniors and folks making under $30,000 with $500 stipends, if you will, to help have an emergency fund. We also have a program we've developed in partnership with myself and Connection Credit Union called Banking Beyond Bars. And it's open to anybody that's been released from incarceration in the last 36 months. All you have to do is have a job, sign up for a bank account. It doesn't matter what your banking history was. After the first couple of months, meeting with your money mentors and making sure your money goes direct deposits, you receive a $500 credit card. And after 2 months, you're eligible for an auto loan. You're eligible for easier down apartment rental assistance at low interest rates. So it's really been amazing to capture the financial literacy aspect, because we know it's unkind, even though most of us probably never learned about money until we're older. It's actually unkind not to teach your kids about money. If the first time they learn about money is when they take out a $10,000 or $20,000 loan for a student loan that they'll be stuck with for years. I think we put them at a disadvantage advantage. So it's our belief that this is ways to ignite generational wealth at an early age. And when I knew we were on to something, it was after the first day. One of the parents came back the second day of class in early 2021, and she approached me and she's like, "Well, what are you teaching my kid?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, we just taught the difference between needs and wants, which is the first part of the course." And I say, "Why? Is there a problem?" She said, "Well, we were in the store last night and I went to grab some, and my son stopped me and say, 'No, mommy, that's a want, not a need.'" So it was at that point we knew that we were on to something. We've just been continuing on from there. And in fact, we have our next financial literacy youth camp coming up April 7th through 11th. And we're going to try to do all grades 1st through 12th with a minimum of around 125 students. So that'll be exciting. Next slide. Our second pillar that we decided to attack was racial justice. And this could be a broad term in a lot of areas because a lot of things in our country and a lot of the laws and a lot of the things that go on are actually impacted by race. They may not be racist and racial, but they've been impacted by that. So it was our opportunity. We actually had the first large event post-COVID. We were an organization that took an opportunity to break out of COVID when everyone was still wearing masks. And we created a racial inequity summit where we had classes on racism in healthcare, racism in education, the school to prison pipeline, racism in the workforce, all taught by people of color from that perspective. We've had classes with judges, we've had panels with all the chiefs of police, just trying to give them a different lens in terms of how this community sees racial justice and racism within these systems. All of the people that we brought out here to Kitsap County will probably end up being in the history books. In 2023, we had Michael Eric Dyson. I'm not sure if most of you are familiar with him, who really brought an impactful situation. This past year in 2024, we had our keynote from Miss Jane Elliott. If you're familiar with Miss Jane Elliott, she's a longtime educator. She taught, she has a program called Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. And she's about 89 years old, you know, a very sharp lady. And for this year in 2025, I could probably announce this now, we're actually having a Women of Color conference so that we can start allowing women of our community or the women of our nonprofit to step forward and lead and mobilize as we move forward. Next slide, please. Yeah, and it's been our work to when they talk about racial justice and equity and those type of things, I'm a firm believer that there are only two ways to gain equity, and that is through building it or fighting for it. This country was built on a fight for justice. This country was built on a fight for freedom. And I've never been in a space where nobody just handed me equity. I had to figure out how to build it, or I had to figure out how to work and fight for it. So that's been great. Our police department has been a big partner in what we do. And as you can see in the picture with a few other gentlemen, that was at a Super Saturday where we shared our financial literacy programs with those most likely to need them. And it's really been amazing to work with these folks. Our board consists of PhDs. It consists of school board members. It consists of all people who are smarter than me and have a greater resume than me. And I'm just proud and honored to have people of that magnitude kind of follow my leadership. And it's been amazing. Next slide, please. So our third pillar was wellness, because we understood that, of course, 70% has to do with making a dollar and what to do with it, but the wellness portion is so necessary. We have a tendency, not only people of color, but men in general have a tendency to stay away from doctors, We have a tendency to stay away from discussing our needs. Somebody asks us what's wrong, we'll say nothing, figure out our issues. So we've been focusing on the wellness portion, and we've had mindfulness retreats. We in 2024 we had our first annual male wellness golf event, and where we really bring in speakers to talk about the issues as it relates to men, because it's statistically factual that women live longer than men. And that's because, Colleen, when you guys have an issue, you go call your girlfriend, you get together and talk about it. Susie, you and her might get together and talk about those issues, but not us as men. We'll go in a corner, or we'll self-medicate, or we'll just find solitude. So we want to try to make it common and normal for not only men, but men in particular, to focus on their wellness, focuses on their mind, focuses on the trauma, the past trauma, and all of it starts in their body. We know all behavior is communication. So it's been a focus of ours to learn more about the wellness aspect uh, to complete our third pillar of service. Next slide, please. Um, yeah, our main goal here is a big part of that is reentry. But when you see reentry, when you see folks getting out, what's the plan for them, right? And I think we initially touched on that in starting. So we've come up with a program and a description. In fact, I'll be talking to the commissioners about it on the 24th. It's called Houses of Emancipation. It ties into the Up From Slavery name. And when the main goal behind the idea is to build 12 to 15 tiny homes with a double wide, some type of structure for community showers and meals and things of that place. And you'll give a person a door and a job the first day out. Through my businesses, we partner with a temporary agency, we have a construction company, and we have a bank, all designed to create opportunities. Because again, I don't know anyone that's getting released from prison and they're at the door thinking about how they're going to screw up. They're actually nervous about how they're going to not fail their families again. They're actually uncomfortable with the situations they're living back into. So we want to tap into that high energy and build a mechanism to kind of vet these people 3 to 6 months prior to release, and get them in a position to where we can teach social adaptation, life skills, so that they'll have their own tiny home and they'll be employed on day one. And we can kind of keep them isolated and gradually issue them back into society. And we're working with different agencies to create wraparound services around that. I think we're getting it backwards. We want folks to get out of prison and take all these classes and do all this training and do all of this, which is fine. Those things are important. But I think I just mentioned to Colleen and Mitch that, the male brain has to feel useful to be effective. We got to feel like we're contributing. And if you got all these classes that you're involved in, you got no way to make no funds, and that puts you at a disadvantage. It also affects the how the brain works. So we wanted to figure out how to create that opportunity for those folks. And again, we'll be speaking with the commissioners to try to develop that strategy and that commission to see how we can do reentry differently in our community. As far as the numbers are concerned, this is what DOC pays or charges per inmate, which is $63,000. And a lot of people might have differing opinions about that amount. But if we found a way to circumvent that and use those funds in different ways, I'm sure we can build a more economically strong community. They build 63,000 per inmate, and they only have 9,600 employees with a $3 billion budget over 2 years. So in Department of Corrections has the second highest budget in the state, next to the military, if my numbers serve me correctly. That's $3 billion every 2 years for less than $10,000. And I don't know no business that has that amount of budget for only $10,000, and most of the employees are officers, so they're probably making a nice living wage, but it's not a lot of money that they're making in those spaces. Also, DOC and correctional industries, which is their revenue generating arm, is not regulated by OSHA. It's the only entity in the country that's not regulated by OSHA. So we have no rules in place. That means that they could work you, and if you refuse to work, they could punish you. And the reason I put this up is because I want to make it clear that prison and the Department of Corrections is not necessarily about crime and punishment. It's about free labor, held up by the Constitution of the United States and the 13th Amendment. They're paying folks pennies on the dollar to work. We even see that now with the wildfires, and they're kind of grabbing folks out of prison and putting them in those spaces. And you can train to be a firefighter in prison, but then when you get out, you aren't allowed to be a firefighter because of your past, whatever that may be. So we feel that we have the mindset, and we have the opportunities and the upstream relationships to change the landscape of reentry in our county. And here's why that's so important. There are two things that I know about everybody on this call, and I've never even met probably 98% of you, but I can tell you two things about yourself that I know are factual. One is that you know someone, or you're related to someone that's directly impacted by the criminal justice system, or they're probably on drugs, they're probably in and out of these systems, and they're asking you, I'm sorry, I see your hand, Colleen. Let me stop there and get your question.
Oh, I just wondered, the picture you have of the tiny homes, does that exist today? And if so, where?
It does not exist. We've had discussions with our mayor, our city council about zoning, about the positioning of it. And we're working with Employment Security Department, Kids Have Mental Health. We're forming a team to help us carry out this vision. Many hands make light work. And this is just a larger project, but we don't intend to have that many homes in one space. Probably 12 to 15 is most, so that we can kind of build a couple of the templates in the community. But there are a lot of laws that have to be followed and procedures that have to be followed still with Department of Corrections for those being released. Like, it has to be within a certain distance from a bus stop. It has to be in a certain distance away from a school. So we've been talking with our legislators, our city council people, and our mayor about bringing that to Kitsap County.
And so the $63,000 per inmate, is that what it would cost to build one of these tiny homes, or is that what it costs annually to have someone incarcerated?
Great question. That's what it would cost annually to have someone incarcerated, according to the Department of Corrections. But in our place, what we do know is Department of Corrections offers stipends to folks being newly released. They offer housing vouchers in the form of $700 a month for 6 months. So if you got out today, you started working today, and you had this voucher for 6 months, after 3 months of building some funds, and you're in the Banking Beyond Bars program, you started to focus on your money. We believe within the first 90 days to 6 months, the program will be fully self-sustainable. And we can get these folks to starting back to contributing. And I just put those numbers up there because most folks out here living in poverty don't make $63,000 a year. And it's hard for me to believe that DOC is actually paying that much money or using that much money per inmate. And you guys might be asking yourself, well, this guy's a businessman and an entrepreneur. What makes him a subject matter expert on these situations? And I've told you about my businesses, and I've told you about the things that I've got going on personally. But what I have failed to mention to you, well, not fail, it was by design, is that I've been to prison myself. I've been to prison a few times. I've actually was introduced to freebasing cocaine at 16 years old as a child. And the next month after that, five of my friends and myself were given 3 felonies each for a fight in the park over a baseball game. Whereas maybe the sheriff in Colleen County would have told the white boys to go home before we tell your parents. So it started off early for me, being addicted to drugs and a felon, still in high school, still trying to make it. And drugs and incarceration took up a substantial portion of my life. But yet there's been a paradigm shift, a complete paradigm shift in my life. And, since 2011, I got out December 30th of 2010 is when I was released. And here we are in 2025. I find myself in these positions to be able to be a subject matter expert on a couple things that could be impactful to our world and to our community, and that is financial literacy. Entrepreneurship is a portion of financial literacy, and I've become an expert in that. And thinking about all of the people that you all know who've been impacted by this justice system, all you want for that person is to get it right. And you probably ask yourself, why can't this person get it right? Why do they keep going on? It's because they've changed. They've even made up a word for it. They call recidivism. And they've traded retirement for recidivism. So I think I know what it takes to get out and stay out, because I've been part of that cycle before, to where I've been in and out using drugs, and I didn't figure it out until I was over 40. So I would just say, yeah, I'm what it looks like, but there's still an opportunity for those folks that to get it right. I
Are
think
these
that,
programs also available for people that serve time in jail rather than just prison?
yes, they are. Incarceration is incarceration. In fact, we've been doing reentry simulations around the state, and not just with Clallam and Jefferson counties, but we've actually in discussions with the Secretary of State's office and the Governor's Reentry Council to actually do a reentry simulation for the legislators, and that's tentatively set for June 26th on a Thursday. And we call it an exercise in empathy. Because like in the first picture I showed you that the officer was in jail on purpose. What we do is in the simulation, we create identities for all the participants, and it simulates a month in the life of somebody being newly released from prison. And each week is 15 minutes, and you have to go around getting your IDs, going to court, buying food, making your doctor's appointments. And it gets so tough because of the barriers in the system, until some folks just choose to stay in jail. And that officer that you saw in that picture, and a couple of those city council folks in Whatcom County, they chose to stay in jail because reentry was too difficult. They couldn't get food, they couldn't make all of their classes. And just to give you a small, oh, go ahead, Susie, I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt, Darryl. I thought, oh, sorry if my dog's barking in the background. I recall when you and I were talking that there was, of course now he starts barking. There was an interest in bringing some services for reentry to Jefferson County.
Yes, ma'am. Great question. I'd have to tell you that Clallam, Jefferson, and Whatcom County, where we've done the reentry simulations, their community seems to have a little bit more energy around reentry, basically because it's started by stakeholders and system people like yourself, Susie, people at the top of the food chain, if you will. And we have those upstream relationships, but we're a grassroots organization. So it's different, as opposed to All Hands Whatcom, which is a community-led organization. My point is, we've been getting a lot of traction from other places, right? And I didn't want to create this in other places before I looked at my own county. So one of the things that I'll be talking with the commissioners about on the 24th is to try to create a multi-county opportunity where we can join forces on the top levels, because we all care about this. And there's not really an idea of what to do. Well, Up from Slavery has a track record. We have data, we have statistics. And I actually employ people who are in these systems, and we found that our programs are way more effective. They're way more substantive, and they focus on more areas. So we're gonna probably, after I talk with the commissioners, I'm gonna explain to them that I'm interested in working with other counties who've explored interests, but I don't want to do that and overstep my county, right? And that's the reasons that I've been slow to reach out to Jefferson and Clallam. But I have talked to Sahelish Behavioral Health, Sahelish, and they're going to be a big part of what we do. They're going to be the connecting arm to Clallam and Jefferson. And we just talked to Whatcom County yesterday as well. So we're building a conglomerate, if you will, around reentry to make those programs substantive and effective.
That's great. Anything I can do or we can do, I think it'd be great to help leverage and support you and bringing those support networks to our region.
Well, you're a big part of that. You've heard of the school to prison pipeline, and it's our goal to build a pipeline back to you and what you do. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. Is that the last slide, I think?
Looks like it.
Great, great. Yeah, so Daniel, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, great presentation. I put some information in the chat. Would love to talk to you offline, but I wanted to make sure that you had Curtis Rogers' contact information as well. He's a good brother doing similar things in Vancouver. It'd be wonderful if we could have a statewide network that are collaborating. I'm also working with Leonard Simpson of Lincan Builders. He's out of King County, and he's developing a mentorship at Monroe. So it'd be wonderful if we could collaborate. And I have a couple housing models for you to look at in the chat as well. But thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Colleen, for setting this up.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I think it's important. Our goal as a businessman, it's my goal to create an ecosystem. We have a lot of job openings. We have a lot of folks that businesses aren't being successful because they got nobody to work, you know. So we want to use businesses as an opportunity that one hand washes the other, if you will. Yes, sir, Mr. Maxwell.
Morning, Darryl. Yeah, thank you very much. A great presentation. And I'm going to speak with my healthcare hat on. I was, looking at your 3 pillars, and they're right on. The one regarding health is a big one. That's the sort of the lens I'm looking at it from. So I want to make sure that you are aware. You might be aware that there is a statewide initiative run by the healthcare authority to around healthcare services for the reentry population. There is you're going to see in this coming 5 years a big focus from the state on trying to facilitate additional healthcare services for that reentry population, being able to provide some services while still incarcerated. But we know there's a lot of mental health and substance use disorder needs, as well as just general healthcare needs that have to be addressed in that setting to set them up for success when they leave. And just so that you're aware that the state is putting a lot of money, and in Clallam County, as well as Kitsap and Jefferson, our local ACH, the Olympic Community of Health, is spearheading the deployment of those services. So you can get in touch with me. I can connect you with our OCH director to give you more details. But there should be some services, healthcare services, to support the kind of work you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. That's very impactful. We all know health is our greatest wealth. you know, and I'm familiar with OCH through our work with Peninsula Community Service and the Public Health District here. So yeah, I definitely like to make that connection because, you know, wraparound services are important, but wraparound shouldn't be the only goal. You know, classes and checking the box and all of those things that you put people through just to keep them connected to the system shouldn't only be the goal. I think for me, I'm not into checking box. I'm into coloring the whole box in like a voter pamphlet, you know. So I think that's a huge part. And thank you for that, sir, that information. I'll be following up with somebody.
You know, as a mom with a son who's dealt with serious mental illness and addiction to marijuana um, and continues to deal with it, he found it really difficult to find a job in Clallam County where the employer could work with his limitations. And you know, he's been taught now to talk about the limitations and, you know, his neurodiversity. And but I've also found folks won't hire him if they are aware of that. Do you know of any programs or businesses that understand um, those kind of differences in employees and that how they'll try to help manage that for him?
Well, my own business, I probably would struggle with the same problem, even though my record has been vacated. I think that they have these practices in place. And when you think of folks getting out of prison, most folks look at it with a eye of scrutiny and marginalization, not realizing that that could have been them, for maybe when they had too many drinks at a party. So folks tend to forget where they stand. I will say that, like for myself, I had the same issue. I actually got in business by an accident. Nobody would hire me. And I was washing dishes the first day I had a job washing dishes, and I'm over 40 years old washing dishes, but I was the proudest dishwasher they had. But I knew that that wouldn't suffice for me. My paradigm shift told me that wouldn't suffice. So in trying to apply at the shipyard and the post office and all those stuff, they wouldn't hire me. So my brother kind of told me, he's like, well, man, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're a career criminal. Nobody's gonna hire you. You're gonna have to figure it out yourself. So I got in barber school. I figured I cut hair. I could open a barber shop and figured out that way. Well, not only did I wash dishes and get in barber school, but I got a lawnmower. I borrowed $100 from my girlfriend and bought me a lawnmower. And I was gonna cut your grass on the weekend if you would let me. And by the time I got out of barber school, I had so much money coming in, doing landscape, to barbering was getting in the way, which led to another business, which led to another opportunity. So, and I hated landscaping growing up. So the irony of it is we have to find opportunities for these folks because the job ain't always it. And then we have to have discussions with the business community and help them look at it from an empathetic lens, because a lot of times we lose out on smart people just because they've done something bad or made a mistake. And I don't know no one who hasn't made a mistake. So we've been working with a temporary agency and a couple small businesses, and I'm actually in discussions with a construction company now to try to help them reassess the priorities that they have as it pertains to hiring ex-offenders.
Great. So Patricia asked in the chat, does your program accept Latinos who must make up the majority of the 20% of others in Kitsap?
So our program accepts anybody. Of course, we're Black led, which is a different kind of empowerment. But I have white board members. We have white people in all of our programs. We have people of all nationalities. And in fact, our financial literacy camp that we're holding this year, we've partnered with Kitsap Immigrant and Assistance Center, where we're going to add 2 classes in Spanish, and we're going to have not a reentry, but a financial literacy simulation for all of the high school students. So this is the first major opportunity to try to mobilize with that community. There's always been a divide between certain communities of color. But yeah, we're working with, we're actually meeting tomorrow with that group to try to facilitate that and bring them in and help them be more involved in what we're doing and pass those opportunities along as well.
Okay, great. So I think I got all the questions in the chat. Is there anything anyone else wanted to say or share or ask?
Colleen, I'm sorry, I can't, it's Rebecca. I can't type quickly enough. I was just wondering, Darryl, we keep hearing about people, employers specifically looking for people to work and that they can't find them. I'm just wondering if in this particular environment, more employers have been willing to look at some of your formerly incarcerated people.
Yeah, I think that it requires some discussions with the decision makers because a lot of these policies and practices are really just words on the page. They don't really mean anything. And we can't complain about not having qualified candidates when our qualifications are actually a little beyond what they should be. So I think for me, it's been a kind of a grassroots effort to connect with different employers. Being a business owner myself, the conversations are a little bit different when I walk in the room as an entrepreneur. If I walk in a room as an ex-felon, they might not give me the time of day. But seeing as how I have data, how I have employees who become successful, who are rebuilding their families, I'm just trying to model what that looks like to them because I can't make folks do anything. We're just trying to have to show them that it works. And not forget, not look down your nose at somebody because I'm pretty certain there was one time you were drunk after a party or had too many drinks that you probably could have went to jail. And you might be the owner of that company. So stop with your shit, excuse my language, stop with your stuff, looking down your nose at folks, and let's create an ecosystem. And I think that here in Western Washington, with Kitsap, Jefferson Clallam, and Whatcom County, we have enough upstream relationships, people at the top who actually get it. Our prosecutors, Whatcom's prosecutors, I'm pretty sure Susie knows the prosecutor of Clallam and Jefferson, having those discussions. And like I said earlier, our next step is the legislators, to give them an exercise in empathy because they make decisions because it doesn't impact them. But if we could traumatize them a little bit and show them the impact of it, I'm quite sure that they look at it differently.
Can you give us a few examples of what are required of folks after they are released from prison? Like
Of course. I mean, this is part of it is called a judgment and sentencing, stipulations, things you have to go through. You have to go to court every week. You might be assigned to treatment. Then you have to go to probation, and you might have anger management, and then you might have specific reportings, and then you might have CPS movements, and you have all these different things that go on. And an example of a barrier being created by proxy. You have a time limit that you have to be at certain places, right? So you catch the bus and you go to DMV to get your license. Well, the bus was late, so you get the DMV and the DMV is closed, right? They're closed for lunch. So you got a choice. You can go back so you won't get in trouble, or you can wait 30 minutes till they open, which is going to make you late and you still get in trouble, right? And oftentimes people get sent back to jail and prison for situations so simply as that. And they call these violations, which is one of the main things we're going to be focusing on, all these violations, the greatest impact to recidivism is community custody violations. They call it escape from community custody. So if I miss a class or if I'm late for an appointment, they can charge me with escape from community custody and lock me up. Not only do I lose my job, I lose the momentum that I built trying to rebuild my relationships with my family. They think I went out here and screwed up because I got a new charge. and you haven't really escaped from anything. So we've been talking to the prosecutors and hopefully the legislators that we could change that, you know, and look at it a little differently. And this is part of why we want to do something different with reentry through houses of emancipation, because I think probation is ineffective. I think it's negative. Most probation officers that I've ever met operate like bullies, and they're not trying to help. They're trying to police, if you will. And coming out of prison is like coming from another country. You know, this world is moving so fast. It takes a lot of social adaptation. It takes a trauma-informed care approach. And most of these folks don't have that, you know. So we want to figure out how to be more nurturing to the folks that are coming out, not have all of these unnecessary and expectations of folks who haven't figured out how to live in the world yet. And then if you've been in prison for 10, 20 years and you're 60 years old, you don't have a retirement. You probably get $200 or $300 in Social Security because you haven't put anything in. So there's that trade-off for recidivism versus retirement, right? And nobody in their right mind believes that Social Security is a retirement, but we're creating more homeless people. The homeless population, the mentally challenged population, the drug addicted population, all suffer from the same thing. 90% of them struggle from the same thing, and that's ineffective reentry practices, because most of the people in those situations have been to jail. And they're just caught up in that cycle, and it becomes easier, as Ms. Ames can attest, it becomes easier to just stay in jail. It becomes easier to say, man, forget it, man. It's too difficult to try, because every time you try to go in a space, there's a barrier there to not give you the opportunity that you deserve like every other citizen. So.
Okay, well.
Colleen, I'll just echo what Darryl said. The simulation that he puts on is really impactful. I walked in not knowing what the format was going to be, and it was really amazing to think that even the smallest thing, like if you don't have an ID, like you game over, you don't get any of your services. I do know that Washington State, I read somewhere, and Darryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but that now inmates are gonna get an ID when on their as part of their exit package, which is a huge deal. But there's so many ways where we just already put someone who's vulnerable out there with you know, hits coming left and right. It's no wonder that they have such a hard time getting their feet underneath them. And it just seems so basic, right? There's just some really core things that we can do to shore someone up. Because as Darryl said, we've all made mistakes, and some of us, myself included, have been super lucky to dodge a bullet. And someone else standing right next to me might not have that same opportunity, and then their life's going to go on a very different course. So Darryl, thank you. I'm really grateful for everything you're doing, and hopefully we can bring as much as you and your colleagues to Clallam and Jefferson County as possible.
Looking forward to it. And thank you all for this opportunity. I just ask us. We just aim to give you a different lens or a different illustration, paint a picture for you to give you something to take a look at. And the data shows that we are not correct. Let's remember. I'll say this again. Incarceration in prisons is not about law and order. It's not about public safety. It's not about any of those things. It's about slave labor. The prison system was created as to appease the southern states. It started off with black codes and slave catchers and all that. And all this is our history. And we have to look at it differently and assess it. And I don't think they're going to change it. I think prisons are necessary in some cases. But if it wasn't making money, they would have done away with it a long time ago. You know, and we have no regulations and not very much oversight. And we're complaining about money and fees and fines and all of this type of stuff. But I don't hear nobody complaining about that $3 billion budget that DOC has every 2 years with less than 10,000 employees. That just doesn't make sense to me. Those numbers don't add up.
So have you ever given one of these experiential seminars to judges that I assume they're the ones that are imposing the requirements upon release?
Yeah, we've actually had a panel with the judges in our county. They're very familiar with the work that we do. We're gonna ask the judges to be part of our rec recidivism program. But I actually think they they are limited by the RCWs. You know, so it has to be a collaborative effort between the stakeholders, the judges, and the legislators. I even just spoke with the state Supreme Courts like about a month and a half ago, and I explained to them the same things. You guys are you. It's you guys that are doing this. It's not crime and punishment. You're sentencing people to things that don't even make sense. People are going to jail for things that don't impact society negatively. You know, it's almost like it's arbitrary. So, you know, we're hoping to give everybody an opportunity to experience a little trauma. Coming from prison is scary. It's scary. It's scary because you don't know how people are going to accept you. You know it's going to be hard. You know you failed your family, and we don't treat those parts of the person. We just put so many expectations on them, not realizing that we don't know this new person. I don't know my brother now because he's trying to change. I don't know my sister anymore. And I have expectations of them that are too lofty for them because they haven't figured out society again yet. So I think it requires a lot of work on the part of everyone.
Okay, well, let's see. One last thing in the chat from John Temple. Are there any figures on the overall cost of lowering recidivism versus the savings of the expense that will be reduced from the cost of all tries, but that just the wins will save?
Yeah, I think that number of 63,000 a year. I don't know. There's not a lot of people that make $63,000 a year, even though that's not a lot of money. Probably not anybody on this call, but most of the people coming out of prison, that could be used in different ways. And since there's no regulations on DOC, I just think that we have to work around the system and give a comparison. Like the comparison for me is to show the ineffectiveness of work release centers and probation comparative to what we do. We want the data and we want actionable items. We want to take actionable steps to put people in positions to be successful, not just put them in a space and put all the onus on the individual to figure it out and be successful. And then when they can't, you know, we want to lock them back up. So I think that I don't think they're going to lower those costs of recidivism. I think they're going to increase them because again, prison is about making money, you know? Yeah, and there's no oversight on it. So thank you for your question, Robert.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Darryl. It's an important topic and affects many of us. So it's lovely to hear that, you know, you are working on this, and we'd love to join in to your efforts because the people in our community too need support as they're trying to enter back into society. All right. Well, thanks again. And we'll have this recording up on our website later today, along with the slides. All right. Enjoy your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.